Today, when 2025 ends, we shall discuss Canadian export trends we saw this year and also the road ahead. When we look back at Canadian export activity in 2025, one word stands out immediately: change. This was not a year of steady, predictable growth. Instead, 2025 marked a period of adjustment, recalibration, and, for many exporters, a complete rethink of how international business is approached. Canadian exports moved through sharp ups and downs across the year. Shifts in global demand, ongoing geopolitical tensions, tariff uncertainty, and price fluctuations, particularly in energy and resource sectors, created a stop-start rhythm that exporters had to learn to navigate in real time. For many businesses, traditional long-term planning gave way to scenario planning, multiple forecasts, flexible logistics, and faster decision-making. One of the defining features of 2025 was the increasingly assertive and protection-leaning trade posture of Canada's largest trading partner to the south. While Canada and the United States remain deeply interconnected, Canadian businesses experienced renewed exposure to tariff threats, trade enforcement actions, and sudden policy shifts that were often driven by domestic priorities rather than bilateral cooperation. For Canadian exporters, this reinforced a hard truth: dependence on a single dominant market carries real and growing risk. Even well-established exporters found that access to the U.S. market could no longer be taken for granted. Pricing pressures intensified, compliance requirements increased, and uncertainty became a constant planning factor. As a result, many Canadian businesses began asking an important strategic question: what happens if our primary market becomes less predictable or less welcoming? This question drove one of the most important behavioral shifts seen in 2025, a serious and accelerated push toward overseas markets. Rather than viewing international diversification as a future ambition, Canadian businesses increasingly treated it as a near-term necessity. Companies began actively exploring customers in Europe, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America, regions where demand growth, demographic trends, and trade agreements offered greater long-term stability. At the same time, exporters began changing how they entered new markets. Instead of large, high-risk expansions, many adopted a phased approach: smaller pilot shipments, limited region testing, and gradual relationship building with overseas distributors and buyers. This allowed businesses to manage risk while learning how different markets operate. 2025 also made one thing very clear: exporting is no longer just about selling more, it is about managing exposure. Trade policy developments reminded exporters that market access can change quickly and for reasons beyond commercial performance. Contracts were tightened, pricing structures were reviewed, payment terms and currency exposure received greater attention. Canadian businesses became more disciplined, more analytical, and more intentional about where and how they sell. Energy exports continued to play a major role in Canada's trade performance, but the year reinforced an important lesson: export values are often driven as much by price movements as by actual volumes. This encouraged exporters in non-resource sectors to focus on value-added goods and differentiated offerings that are less vulnerable to price volatility. In this evolving environment, exporters increasingly recognized the value of practical, low-risk support when entering new international markets. This is where Steer North International Consultancy Services Limited plays a distinct role. Steer North works with Canadian exporters using a vested, result-based model, helping businesses identify and access new overseas markets without charging any upfront consultancy fees. Rather than billing by the hour or requiring large retainers, Steer North aligns its success with that of the exporter, focusing on market research, buyer identification, international outreach, and deal facilitation only when real, tangible opportunities are created. For many small and medium-sized Canadian businesses, this approach removes a critical barrier to exporting: upfront cost combined with uncertainty. It allows companies to explore new customers abroad, test demand in unfamiliar markets, and build international relationships while preserving cash flow, an especially valuable advantage in an era of trade volatility and shifting global dynamics. As we move forward from the lessons of 2025, one message stands out clearly: Canadian businesses can no longer rely on proximity alone. Growth increasingly lies beyond our borders, in markets where demand is rising and trade relationships are evolving in Canada's favor, positioned to turn today's uncertainty into tomorrow's opportunity. As we step into the year ahead, wishing you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year, one filled with resilience, new markets, and sustainable international growth.